Hey guys, so here bringing you another video. Now, this video, sorry it's a bit late. Basically, it's just timed with the new season, so I prioritized the placement games and the start to the ranked adventure this season over this, but I did want to make a video on it because Udyr is a pretty interesting champion. He's obviously, in modern day, he's quite one-dimensional, but he is the next champion that's getting the big VGU. So these are the kind of bigger reworks. It's not just visual, it's also mechanical as well. Obviously, it goes without saying, Riot kind of got scared away from doing big reworks since Aatrox, so he's still fundamentally going to be Udyr, but with a much more modern feel to him. So, as you can see, this is his model. I actually think, let me know what you think down below, I think he looks pretty cool. So, the big thing that they did say they got rid of is antlers. So, Udyr did have antlers for some reason, I guess. He was like a druid and antlers, so they've gotten rid of those because they just felt in the modern day setting, making him look obviously more detailed like this, the antlers kind of looked a bit goofy, I think. So let's get into it and just see what the update is. I do think there is some mechanical update as well that we can get through, but anyway, so hey all, so this is Reeve. He is, I think, the guy that's actually doing the update, so which will come out later this year. So maybe it's been a bit delayed because I vaguely remember them saying it might be early 2022 or like at least the first half, but that being which will come out later this year. Obviously, technically in a week is later this year, but that gives me the impression this is not close to being done. But since the last check-in, which we did do a video on as well, we've entered full production on Udyr. So this post will focus on how he's looking in-game, but before we get into it, here's a quick recap of our goals for the update. So we want to preserve Udyr's stance-changing identity and keeping as a primarily auto-attack / melee-focused champion. We think this is what makes Udyr unique and stand out on the roster, especially the stance swapping. Obviously, we've got a lot of melee champions, but not many of them have stances. To help his gameplay feel more modern, we want to add a bit more interest to his stances and melee pattern to give more depth to playing him, as well as make it more clear when Udyr is doing something cool. Right now in League, which is true, there's no hype moments to Udyr. Like, there isn't. His hype moment is running at stuff or running away. There isn't, like, an outplay that you can do on Udyr. They probably want to give him some skill. And, you know, that might sound harsh, give Udyr skill. Udyr right now in modern day League doesn't have any mechanical skill at all. He has less mechanical skill than Mal's. What Udyr has is decision-making skill. A good Udyr is in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. It's nothing to do with his mechanics. Now, some people go, oh, you got to be in the right stance. Sure, but when a stance has got a second cooldown, you can be in the right stance pretty much at all times. It's the decision-making behind those that is actually the thing of Udyr, not mechanics. So they want to give him probably something flashy that actually is like, oh my god, that Udyr's actually pretty good, because that doesn't exist at the moment. Next up is, we want to update Udyr's visuals to Modern League standards while keeping his general theme of a warrior shaman intact. Cool. And then finally, as for his narrative, we want to bring his in-game portrayal closer to how he's been portrayed in recent years and lore. And with that is, he is a Freljordian champion now. I don't think he was years ago. They updated his lore and he is now very much in the Freljord. And I think the history of him, he's a Freljordian druid type guy that went to go train in Ionia under Lee Sin. That if you actually see here, this red band, that's actually Lee Sin's headband. It is literally from Lee Sin. Lee Sin gave it to him after Udyr went to go train, and that he is wearing Lee Sin's headband, which is pretty cool. It's a nice detail. So here it is. So obviously these are low render mock-ups of Udyr, obviously. So you have the original, update version 1, update version 2. Now I don't know if this is fully in realization of character size, because the size difference is huge. I'm not sure about that. Maybe they just, maybe in rendering a model, they just do make them bigger for higher poly count or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm not going to go into this in detail because I'm more interested in the actual gameplay that they're going to talk about. But basically, yeah, like, he had antlers. Like, this is obviously the vibe that they were going with. He doesn't have antlers before. Like, he has a bear skin on, which I actually think the bear skin idea is still pretty cool. But they have opted to get rid of them to give him more of a, I guess, humanoid, you know, caricature. But just keeping more with the, you know, the shaman warrior, I guess, instead of, like, the druid element. you know, it is what it is. So they're looking at his proportions, removing the antlers. We like the idea of them, and we tried a lot to get them to work. We just couldn't not get them to look goofy. That's the problem. It would just make him look a bit goofy having big antlers when he's in modern day League, I guess. So one attempt they look like wings, then propellers and whatever. So yeah, in reality, that's what they're doing. So his base body was straightforward, but his stances were a major hurdle. Not only were there 4 of them, but we had to make each one feel, I guess, different to the animal it's associated with. So here you can see, I guess, some of the concepts and powers that Udyr is likely going to be seen. He's got sunglasses there, which is interesting. So, like, as what you can just point out, obviously there's Phoenix, or Cryo Phoenix, I think it might be turning into. That's very much like Anivia's wing, because she is a Cryo Phoenix from Freljord. So, like, that's kind of the idea, and I think that's kind of cool, which isn't bad at all. But it's fun in development. We're still in early Udyr's production. So, yeah, it's still in early Udyr's production. Jeez, I thought he would be coming out in the next few weeks or months, not like early production. That's kind of crazy. And here's the biggest thing that we want to talk about, though, is the actual gameplay. So, mastering Udyr's many stances. So, gameplay clarity is really important in League, and I knew Udyr would be challenging because I needed to look at each of his 4 stances as separate from each other, but still connected, because they needed to feel like Udyr in order to be clear in the game. But I also wanted to animate his stances as they were 4 different champions with entirely different characteristics. That way it won't be confusing to know which one he's in, which is a very good point to make. Udyr holds a deep reverence for wild animals, and I wanted that connection to be clear in his animations. Phoenix stance was the most challenging to animate, and it took many iterations before I found the right direction. We wanted this pose to look like a bird, magical, and related to ice, which is a lot of things. I also wanted to preserve his wildness, so after much thought, I came up the idea with a wind attack idea. So when he's in bird stance or phoenix stance, so I imagine he's, you know, the feathered arms are going to be in effect, and he's blowing, you know, a gust, which is pretty cool. The idea was to mimic a bird's wing. So here you go, you're getting more of an idea. The idea was to mimic a bird's wing, with Udyr creating wind with the shape of his arm. I like the direction a lot, but there's a few problems with that. The size of the air made the attack look like it hit multiple enemies instead of just one, and the team wanted the stance to be related to ice more than wind. That meant I needed to go back to the drawing board. Cool. The next idea, I like this, by the way. The next idea was to animate Udyr creating an ice shard instead of wind, which I guess is this one at the top. So that looked like it was cool. So that it looked like he was using his magic to attack with ice. We all liked the direction more than the first iteration with wind, but we were afraid that it looked too magical and lost his wildness aspect that's key to who he is. That meant I needed to find a good balance between his magical power and his inherent wildness. This is how game design works. You just, test what makes it look good. Next, I leaned into a more physical version of ice, and while I really liked this direction, it felt like it lost the connection with birds. So yeah, now you've lost the connection that he's a pigeon, you know, he's a bird, he's like Anivia. So I changed the stabbing lunge to a swipe to bring the bird-like inspiration from the first idea, the original wind one, but kept the iced wings as a nod to a certain ringed Freljordian demigod, Anivia. The final idea ended up being a blend of everything I did leading up to this point, in true game design fashion, and we're all really excited with where it ended up. Udyr has many types of attacks, and which meant I had to animate it for each stance. My approach to each is pretty much the same. I consider his personality first, and then needed to think about the spell's function, all while making sure they felt unique to each stance. Here are some of the others using the same process. This is really cool. I love this. So that's like, well, this looks more like a bear, or like tiger stance, like claws are out there. You see how his fists are like claws? So that's maybe more of like the tiger stance. And then over here, obviously, you know, fire hands. That's probably more of a nod to ORNN, because he's like the fire boar thing. So again, it's kind of cool how this is all coming together, and I love this type of stuff like game design and how the processes work. You know, when I like a video game, it's very, very regular for me to buy the development book, like the behind the scenes development book of a game, and I read through those quite a lot because I love this type of process. Awakening the Beasts of the Freljord. So, oh dear, it's Udyr. It's also VFX time. Udyr's VGU gave me a good opportunity to push the boundaries in League's VFX style. The first inception of that came from the question, can I make Udyr look like he's in a fighting game and in League? Fighting games have always been a genre where you can express individual mastery over a character and its matchups. When I looked at Udyr's new gameplay, I immediately thought of that individual character skill expression you'd find in a fighting game. His stances have different use cases. Bear stance is great against certain champions in 1v1 duels, Phoenix stance is great for AoE solution, and so on. I picture an Udyr player knowing when it's right to use the optimal stance, and that being the thing that differentiates being a good Udyr player and a great Udyr player. Like I said right at the beginning, that is mainly Udyr's skill. It's knowledge of when to do things. It's not the skill to pull it off, because there's not much skill. He's an incredibly versatile and flexible champion, exactly the type of character I'd want in a fighting game. But fighting games and League are two different games and two different types of VFX. Where's the happy medium? Before we get into examples, there's old Udyr. Before we get into examples, let me explain Udyr's passive, which is what I'll be talking about. If Udyr is already in a stance and it's on cooldown, he can awaken it. Each stance has an empowered form or function when it's awakened. So that's Udyr's new passive. His current passive from memory is like Aspect of the Monkey, and he gets attack speed or something like that. So his new version, his new passive is, you're in Phoenix stance, you're already in it. If you press Phoenix stance again, it's a more empowered version of the stance you're already in. That's the new passive. With this in mind, his passive should visually make you feel powerful when you awakened each stance. Going back to my original goal of trying to combine League and a fighting game, I decided to go for a heavy, stylized, sharp, hard edges shapes to hit the powerful feeling. Think of Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball Z. It's kind of that like obvious I am powered up. It's probably that type of idea. So here we go. After looking at the first iteration, I decided that while cool, the direction didn't quite fit League. So like that was the idea, I guess, for the first one, which is very fighting game. So the second iteration is here. After looking at the first iteration, I decided, well, cool, the direction didn't quite fit League. So now what? I looked for answers in Udyr's spiritual energy. What gives the power look like? What does this power look like after he channels it? How does it connect to the spirit he holds dear? I replaced the hard shapes with softer ones to match League's VFX style, and introduced colour to deepen the overall fantasy. But I couldn't stop thinking about the initial fighting game design, so I had a thought, what if we add everything together and make colour the differentiator between each stance? So I've not seen this below yet, but I'm expecting literally kind of like a Dragon Ball Z explosion that's like Super Saiyan 1 is just gold, and then eventually there's a Super Saiyan God that's blue, there's Super Saiyan, there's a red one, there's a white one, like the different forms of power like have different colors, and that's probably what this is mainly going to be. So here we go. So there we go, literally. So the different stances do the kind of crazy visual of the empowered stance, and the different colors make it obvious which stance you're in. So every player will need to learn, obviously, which is which. And I will say, I've never been massively into color differentiators because I'm colorblind. League doesn't officially have a colorblind mode. Some people say, yes, it does. There's a colorblind setting in the video settings. That doesn't do really anything in-game. That does only things for the health bar and stuff like that. Truly, Riot should probably actually do a proper colorblind mode, though, because there's many forms of colorblindness as well. But because there are 4 stances, I needed to create a color palette for each one. These visuals are all using the same exact VFX. The only exception is color. Which, yeah, they all have the same animation, but they do actually look vastly different. So you've got, again, because my eyes, the bottom right one is like a red, I guess. The top right is, in my eyes, like a pale green. And then the problem that I've got, and I'll say straight away as feedback, if the 2 left ones, so if this one and this one are different colors, I cannot tell. So that's one thing I will say. If ever a rioter is listening, I cannot tell they are different colors. So I wouldn't know if that's bear form or bird form by the explosion there, because they are exactly the same in my eyes. So I will say that as a bit of feedback. Oh, here you go. So bear stance is on the left and ram stance is on the right. So maybe they are the same? Maybe? I don't know. Hopefully they are, because, yeah, I couldn't tell between. Anyway, so bear stance on the right. So the design felt really cool, but nothing actually communicated that Udyr entered a more powerful form. So I decided to tone down the visuals I had and focus on a way to make it clear he was in an enhanced state. Up until this point, I was creating a VFX on Udyr's old model, but around this time, Oyo completed an updated proxy model to give us a better idea of how he'd actually look in-game. This meant I could start creating VFX based on Udyr's updated kit and model instead of just the blue skying ideas on his old one. Before I got started on Udyr's new model, I needed to prioritize which elements of the gameplay were most important to communicate. For example, when you press Q, 3 things happen. Udyr enters bear... Wait, okay, this is a bit of a thing. When you press Q, bear stance. That's changed. So maybe bear stance is the aggressive form now, you never know. But Udyr enters bear stance. Udyr gains bonus attack speed for the next 2 attacks. Udyr gains bonus attack speed for a certain duration. So that right there, again, this is why I like these. That's just confirmed that Tiger Stance is gone and is being replaced with Bear Stance. Bear Stance is now going to be the aggressive form because that's giving him the attack speed for his auto attacks. Since the bonus attack speed lasts longer than the awakened passive, that gets a higher visual priority, but even higher than that is making it clear which stance Udyr is in. So this is the thing with game design. It's so much problem solving of like, you can make something look cool, but then are you losing the reality of like, what stance is he in? People need to know, the biggest thing is, does someone know he's in Tiger or Bear stance? Sorry, like they have to know that first and foremost 100% of the time. You have to know which stance he's in. That's, again, but then you also want to give the impression of he's an empowered version of Bear stance or whatever. It's really cool. So I'm not scrolling down on purpose, by the way, because I want to read this and then see what it looks like. So since the bonus attack speed lasts longer than... finally, in League, we typically communicate an auto-attack enhancement by applying a VFX to the champion's hands. In Udyr's case, I added lightning VFX to his bear stance clause to initiate that Udyr's auto attacks are doing something extra. There were 3 visuals I needed to create, with each one unique but still feeling connected to the others. The idle VFX with bear clause active, the stance activation of the awaken buff, and the passives awaken VFX cast and buff. So here we go. Dude. Okay, so what I would say... Okay. What I would say, it looks cool because obviously this is supposed to be VOLIBEAR. Like that's the, you know, demigod, lightning bear, aggressive. It's obviously, you know, earlier they spoke about channeling, like the Phoenix form is channeling ANIVIA. Bear stance is clearly VOLIBEAR. And on, you know, up above here, there's Ram stance. Clearly that's ORNN. So it's pretty cool. I like the idea of it. To me, and I haven't seen it for quite some time, because, again, you don't really see Udyr. But Udyr's ultimate skin, which is Spirit Guard Udyr, it just kind of looks like that's becoming his base skin. Like, am I the only one? Because I swear, base form Udyr, his hands, obviously they don't look as, like, modern because it's a really old skin. But that is pretty much bear stance right now with Spirit Guard Udyr. That's what I would say. And I don't know if it's got all, like, lightning effect, but it definitely, his whole hands become, like, blue bear hands. So... again, I'm not surprised about it, but there we go. So that is the idle animation. That is the activation it does when he gets the empowered version. So obviously it has like a channeling like a Super Saiyan and then way more lightning and energy happening in the hands. And then, Jesus Christ, Udyr's passive awaken cast and buff VFX. So those are the 3 stages. So... that is if you've already got, like... okay, so the order, which is a bit confusing, they should have done this one first. He's not in bear stance. You click bear stance, that's what happens when you click bear stance, and your hands are lightning for the next probably 2 auto attacks, or like a set duration. But then you stay in bear stance, right? And that's what it's going to look like if you just stay in bear stance. But then, if you remain in bear stance, and you click bear stance again... that's what happens. The final one happens. They haven't made that perfectly clear, I would say. They probably should have done it in a different order. But that one does look sick. I will say that. That has the absolute expression of what they're going for. And obviously, this, by the way, is a very early render. This isn't cleaned up. This is not with a final model. Obviously, it looks like a pretty low poly count model as well. So it's only going to look better. That, you know, that's bear stance. You know he's empowered. You can see it. You do not want to be near the Udyr when that's going on. That's cool. That's really nice. I like that a lot. But again, not too different from... Well, it's different, but it's kind of growing on what Spirit Guard Udyr or whatever it is. What I will say, because that skin is an ultimate skin, and obviously Udyr's getting an update, that skin is also going to receive an update too. Like, what's that going to look like? Like, how are they going to make it look better than that? If it's an ultimate skin, they have to make it look better. But that's the base skin doing that. So... interesting, you know. And oh, okay, I was actually going to say, clearly the bear buff is going to be chain lightning, because that's what Volibear does, and it's a form of chain lightning. That's kind of cool. So you might notice some visual language from my early fighting games exploration, and that's because it's there. I was able to combine sharp shapes and thematic lightning hooks and soft blending to the ground within its within it, which is really cool. And that is something unique for Udyr. That's sick. Then I needed to move on to the effects when you interact with enemies. When Udyr's bear stance is awakened, so when you're in bear stance and you press bear stance again, your next 2 auto attacks will do arc chain lightning to your primary target and then spread to nearby enemies. Sound familiar? It's literally very similar to Volibear's passive right now. That is what Volibear's passive is. When you auto attack, you suddenly become, and it happens, chain lightning happens. I actually think this is pretty sick. Like, it is directly what Udyr's lore is. He's a druid monk that got, is connected to the Freljord. And obviously with the Freljord lore, he's taken inspiration from the gods or the demigods of Freljord, and he's put that into his own magic fighting style. I think it's awesome. It's really good. Furthermore, when this arc of lightning hits a single target, it doesn't bounce to others. It'll do increased damage, kind of like the big lightning bear when he's mauling your face. So again, directly taking inspiration from Volibear. And that wraps up what they've got from that side of the VFX, which is awesome. So then the final one, what is this? Dragon. Hello? What? Is that a skin? That has to be a skin, no? So wait, Udyr's... Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, this is a skin. Whew. Wait, does he have a skin called Dragon Spirit? He does not have a Dragon Spirit skin, does he? Udyr's a few very classic, very well-known skins in his catalogue, Spirit Guard anyone, and as we were figuring out his base, we were keeping ideas for his skins in the back of our dev brains. We decided to start with his most recent... Oh, Dragon Oracle. Okay, it's a skin that now that memory does go to that skin a bit, but obviously I just don't see Udyr's, and most of the time when someone's playing Udyr, they're using Spirit Guard. It's a great looking skin with excellent thematics, so there's a lot to keep with some things that would need to be adjusted to match his new character, and also the dragon thematics and colours will easily translate into new Udyrs is here to represent. We wanted to do due diligence while going around exploration, so again, don't need to get into all of this, but basically they're just kind of showing you how the work is put in as well for skins. That not just the base champion has to be obviously remade, redesigned. All the skins do as well. All the skins have to be changed, and to fit the new theme and to hit the Freljord potential and how his abilities now work, they have to be considered too. So like, there's a lot of work. That is why like Riot, a lot of people go, oh, why can't they just do like 5 reworks a year? This is more of the problem. Like, obviously, yes, working out how the champion will change is a problem, but skins are honestly probably the biggest reason for it. If the more skins a champion has, the longer it takes by far. But anyway, what have they gone? Which one they're going for? So is that the one that they've kind of opted for here? Maybe. So it's kind of like a combo between a couple of them. I actually kind of think that one on the left looks the best. But anyway, so we're honing in on more minor details, etc., etc. And here's where we're heading with this skin. So yeah, this is where they're heading with that skin. Honestly, it does look pretty cool. It is more like that one, which I think is nice. And yeah, he looks kind of dragon-like, but also it's Udyr. You can probably tell that's Udyr straight away, so that's good. And then what comes next? So this is the final thing. And there he is, everybody. That is what he's going to look like. Obviously, that's a concept art, not an in-game look, but that is going to be his look. So as you can see, we've made a lot of progress, and we think his base is coming along nicely. I think it's worth sharing that Udyr does have quite a few skins, and this nature of form swapping makes each will take longer than your average champion would. Not to mention, he also has an ultimate skin. Given all that, we still have our ways to go before we can finally get the new Udyr into your hands. We want to make sure we get him and his skins to the right place before he releases into the wild, and we'll be sure to keep you updated in the future roadmaps once we have a clearer picture. So I will say, this is... I was expecting potentially more of a complete champion. They have really given the impression that they're not that far into it. They have probably what he looks like. They are probably at this stage locked into what his abilities are going to do. But now they're actually putting the work in to make it happen. I was expecting maybe a little bit further down the line. But honestly, I'm pretty excited about this. Mainly because I think Udyr, obviously in modern day, he just doesn't really fit modern day League. He is so old, and it's obvious that he's really old. Where Udyr, the new one, I think it's cool to see an old champion like Udyr probably given the fresh coat of paint that he needs, the bit of love that he needs, and hopefully a much better champion, well-rounded for the game. So this is why I like reworks so much. I prefer, as crazy as it sounds, I prefer reworks to new champions. I really do, because we have so many champions in League, and so many of the champions are in not a great place. You cannot compare old champions to new. If you look at the average new champion, Viego, Yone, whatever, like even reworks, I would say, like a Cardi rework or whatever, they have so much more going for them in their kit than even a champion from 3 years ago. Like, it's nearly uncomparable. If you look at the average game of solo queue, I would wager 9 games out of 10, you have a lot of modern day champions in those comps, and a lot of champions like Udyr, the really old champions, you don't see them. The only time you'll see them if you've got a specialist player on them. If you've got a one trick that is a dedicate player to Udyr or Master Yi or something like that. Like, you don't see them because they're not that strong. But there we go. Again, I enjoy doing these videos. It's something a little bit different, but I like game design and I like talking about this stuff. And honestly, he looks pretty cool. The idea that he's taking elements from the Freljordian demigods, putting them into his kit. Like, again, his forms, literally, Anivia, Volibear, ORNN, and there's a ram. Again, someone did tell me last time we did a Udyr update, there apparently is a demigod ram or something, or a boar. It might, because, again, ORNN might be a ram. Or might be a boar. I think that is, yeah, it's like a metal boar or something like that. And that's probably going to be his defensive stance or something. And it might be an LOR or a comic book or something like that. But yeah, like, apparently that is apparently a thing. But anyway, that is going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, please do throw a like on the video. Let me know what you think of Udyr in the comments below. Where do you think he could go? Are you happy with how he's going? Let me know. And that's going to be it. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Peace. Call down the reckoning.